Hello, welcome back to another video. Today's video, I'm going to be installing ball joint spacers on my 1992 Toyota pickup. The ball joint spacers are 1.5 inch thick, supposed to give about 2.5 inch lift. They're going to be on their way today in the mail, but in the meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and install new tie rods, inner and outer, along with the new sleeve. I'm doing that because when I bought this truck, it has the original tie rods and they're still good, but I want to put a new one. When you install ball joint spacers, you're gonna have to go get a professional alignment done, so I might as well put new tie rods while I'm there so that I can get it perfectly, so that the alignment can be perfect. I bought this truck early spring. I've done about 3,000 miles, 3,400 miles on it since I done my 3.4 engine swap. I already went ahead and put new lower and upper ball joints, so that's the reason why I'm not doing it. But if you haven't done any of that, this is a good time to refresh your tie rods, upper ball joints and lower ball joints, or whatever. So regardless of why you're watching this video, if you just need to watch how to do the tie rods, or you want to watch how to do the upper ball joint spacers install, this video will help you. This will apply to most independent IFS Toyota trucks and 4Runners from 86 through 95. So since the ball joint spacers are not here yet, should be here in a couple hours when my mail service folks drop by. But in the meanwhile, we're gonna go ahead and start with the tie rods and go from there. For the tie rod brands that I'm using, these are the made in Japan. These are the 555 brand. Little pro tip: if you guys go to Rock Auto and you guys order the tie rod that's made from Beck and Arnley, they are just Reebok's 555s, and there's really affordable. So the Beck and Arnley brand, if you order those, you will get the 555 brand. So this is what it is. It has the logo right there as well, and also right there. So I went ahead and put anti-seize on the threads and sleeved them up already. They're still loose right now, and I have the Zerk fitting slide in there already. Once I install this, I'll go ahead and put some grease in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the old one out as a complete unit like this, and then I'm gonna measure it and try to get it as close as possible so that when I drive this to my alignment shop, they'll go ahead and perfect it. Since my tie rods are in the truck right now, they're not really that bad. I'm gonna keep that as a whole, probably shrink wrap it, and then put it in the truck and keep it as a spare unit in case whenever these break down or something like that. Trail spare, I call it. So let's go ahead and install these right here. First thing you want to do is jack up your vehicle, take off your wheels, and do all that stuff. If you guys don't know how to do that, then most likely you should not be doing something like this. Your lug nut size might be 19 mil or 21 mil. Mine are 19 mil. When you do your driver's side, to access the inner tie rod nut, it is going to be easier if you steer your wheel towards the left, because the nut right here is being blocked right by a little piece of a little stopper, and I'll show you that in a bit. So we're going to turn the steering wheel towards the driver's side. Here's the driver's side, and like I told you guys, we have access to this outer tie rod, but when it comes to removing this tie rod in, it's being blocked by this right here. And I recommend you guys get the right tool. Get the right tool to press out your tie rod so you don't destroy it, because if you plan to reuse them, you don't want to destroy the boots or anything like that. A quick test on your tie rod is that if they're nice and stiff like that, they're not shaky or anything like that, then they are still good. Like I say, these are still good, but again, I want to go ahead and refresh them, put all new stuff. The upper ball joints and the lower ball joints are still nice and good. So like I said, we're not going to replace those. We're going to reuse these. So that's the little, this is the inner tie rod. And this is the piece that I was telling you about. So you can see it's being blocked off right there. And all you have to do is just steer your wheel. So you can see when I have it fully locked to the left, you have room now right there. It might be blocked off a little bit, but you have more room right there now, and we'll adjust it when we get to it. Next step we want to do is just remove these cotter pins. Remove these cotter pins with pliers, and then we'll shoot these castle nuts out. These castle nuts should be 19 millimeters. If your truck here is pretty rusty, you might want to spray some PB Blaster or some kind of penetrating oil before you start doing any of this. My tie rods here look like they're pretty good shape. Actually, the cotter pin almost looks pretty new still. My frame here has 0 rust, so I'm really proud of my truck here for being a 240,000 mile rig. It's still really in good shape as far as rust wise. Get these cotter pins out, and then we can move to the next step. These cotter pins are not reusable, so try to when you buy the tie rods, they do give you new cotter pins, so we will be using new cotter pins. Don't reuse old ones, guys. There we go. Just go wiggle back and forth. So old one, trash it, and then 19 millimeter. We're gonna save the castle nut because, like I said, we're gonna be reusing this tie rod, and we don't want to damage the threads, or we don't want to damage any of the boot right here. So there's methods, a way of how to remove this. You can use the knocking method. You can use the forks. If you use the forks, you're gonna damage these rubber boots. So if your tie rods are bad and you don't care about that anymore, you can go that method. The safest way to not damage anything is using a puller like this, because this right here will slide in like that, and then you can press it out. So just like that. Oh, this one's already out. So yeah, this one didn't take that much of a pressure. I think I removed this before when I was doing my upper and lower ball joints, so that's why it came out so easy. But yeah, I think I did remove this before. And then you also want to clean all this. I like to put anti-seize in here. You can see there's anti-seize from the past one. I think I removed it last time because when I did my lower and upper ball joints, I removed it to make it easier. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next inner tie rod. The next inner tie rod is the same method. Remove the cotter pin, and then we'll see if we can press it out. So for the inner tie rods, you can see how it's a bit tricky because, like I said, you do have to slide it in like that, and then slide your arms behind it. And the nut to push this thread back in, to push it out, is a 19 mil as well. So should make it really easy. So just like that, and then we're gonna shoot the. And you can see how easy this is with the right tool. It'll just pop right out. I saw that without damaging it at all. Just like that. So everything's still nice. This one's not super loose or tight. And like I said, save your nut. Put the nut back on, and now we keep this for a spare. Now we're gonna go ahead and take this piece here and measure it with our new one and try to get the same distance. We don't have to get it perfect, but we want to get it at least as close as possible so that you can at least make the drive to your professional alignment shop and they can at least get it perfectly tuned in. So let's go ahead and compare it to the old one, the new one. When it comes to tie rods or anything that has a driver or left side, I always zip tie my driver side. So this one here, I want it to be by driver's side, and I put a zip tie there. That's just something that I do. This one don't have anything, so I know this one belongs to the right or the passenger side. So we're gonna take it here, and like I said, guys, it don't have to be perfect because we're gonna take it to the shop, and we just want it, you know, as close as possible. So this one might have to come out a few rounds, no, the other way. They do have a left thread and a right thread. So we look at it right there. This right here is pretty close, guys. Yeah, maybe I can back this one out one more, and then maybe you can use a tape measure or whatever, but I'm just going it by eyeball because I'm gonna pay me a professional shop to do it anyway, so it don't need to be 100%. So we're gonna go with that, guys. We're gonna go with that, and then when I get it in, I want to turn this sleeve out. I want to turn this sleeve to a position where I can easily shoot these nuts. So let me go ahead and get this installed. Installation is pretty simple. I'm gonna go ahead and put some anti-seize on the threads and a little bit on the part where it slides into the where it belongs, where it sits. So you can never have too much anti-seize. So we're gonna go with this position here, guys, or at least this length. I like to clean everything that I do Make sure it's nice and clean. I like to just take one of these rags here, slide it through the hole here. Just go back and forth. Everything's nice and clean. We'll go ahead and put a little bit of anti-seize. If you put anti-seize in here, you don't need to put it on the tie rod, just on the threads here. So I like to put a little bit on the surface right here, just because that's where it's going to sit, and then just a little bit around where it's going to shoot down there, and just like that. And like I said, it doesn't hurt to put a little bit too much, because in the future you don't want this thing to be seized up or anything like that. So just like that, and then go ahead and clean the other side too, the inner tie rod slot. Time to install the new one. Keep in mind of the orientation of your Zerk fitting. When you install your Zerk fitting, it has to point a particular way so that when you come to servicing it, you're not stuck with it being in a position where you can't get to the Zerk fitting. So we're gonna go ahead and do the inner first. Inner tie rod. There's a bit of anti-seize that got on it already, so that's good. I'm gonna loosely put on the nut here just to hold it in place. And then we're gonna put on the outer tie rod. The short tie rod is always the outer, and the long one is the inner, alright? So just like that. Then we'll go ahead and put on the nuts. We'll go ahead and torque the nuts. I'll put the specs for the nuts on the screen here. Torque them down, and then you want to make sure that the nut, the cotter pins aligns so that you can get your cotter pin in there. And you see how this is right here. I like to adjust it so that it's pointing like this, so that I can shoot it later on. So right now we're gonna lock it down to, we're just gonna loosely lock it down. This is a tool mill. And again, the alignment shop will take care of perfecting it later on. So let me go ahead and torque these down, put the cotter pin. We'll go ahead and put some grease in here, Zerk fitting, and you can see how I have it pointed like, I have it pointed this way, so even that when I have my tires down, I can still service it by crawling under it and putting my Zerk fitting in. This Zerk fitting is an 8mm, and then on the other side, you can see how it's like this. You want your Zerk fitting facing down that way, so that when you put your gun in, you can access it from over here. You can see right there the inner tie rod. When you crawl under, you can see the inner tie rod. You can see the Zerk fitting is being blocked right now, so I need to turn that Zerk fitting a little bit more downwards so that I can access it. And that's very easy to do. Take the 8mm and just twist it a little bit. Little quick Google search says that it's 67 foot-pounds for the castle nut. Some people don't really care about torque specs. Sometimes I just shoot the heck out of them. But when it comes to suspension component, it's always nice to have it on a torque spec. So 67, we're way too much. That's 70, 67, 19mm, guys. And if it doesn't line up with the castle nut, you want to keep tightening it. So a little bit more. Always tighten, don't loose. There we go. Take your castle cotter pin, slip them in, and then bend it over. Do the same thing for the inner tie rod, and then go ahead and grease them up. I'm gonna pump some grease so that it's kind of bulging, but not too much, guys. You don't need to put too much grease in there where it starts coming out. It does have an escape hole right here where if you fill it up too much, the excessive grease will come out. And that's perfect as far as the nut wise. Right on the money. Last thing we need to do is just fill the Zerk fitting up and then do the same thing onto the other side. I have just general grease in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 pumps of grease, and that's plenty, guys. 4 pumps would have been great, but 5 is just a little extra. Anything more than that, I think it's a bit overkill. So that's nice and plushy right there. Go ahead and do the other side over here. Everything's all greased up. Like I said earlier, driver's side, passenger side, I like to put a zip tie on it so later on I don't get it mixed up. This tie rod is still good as a spare, or even if you need to reuse it. So don't trash it unless yours is bad. If the tie rod ends were super loose and the boots were ripped, then usually I would just trash them. But these are still decent. Not bad at all. Still could be used for spares or backups. Couldn't use a little cleaning, but other than that, it's pretty good. So we're gonna go ahead and put the tire back on, and then we'll do the passenger side, and then I'll show you guys the ball joint spacers. Before you start doing your ball joint spacers, I like to measure from here to the bottom of the tire just to see what the difference is. So I have it measured right now, 5 3/4. The other side is about 6 inch, I believe. And then later on, we'll measure the aftermath once we install the ball joint spacer. Before you jack up your vehicle, find a couple pieces of metal or a socket or a piece of block of wood and block this section right here. So right under the upper bump stops, right here, I have 2 pieces of metal, and that's the lower bump stop. So find something to plug in between that, because when we jack up the vehicle, it will prevent the upper control arm from going all the way down, full droop. We wanted the upper control arm to be up as much as possible to make it easier for the installation. So do that before you jack up the vehicle. My ball joint spacer from eBay just arrived, and they are way too thick. It's advertised as a 3-inch lift, but when I got them, they are 2-inch thick spacers. The one I got last week was 1 1/4 inch thick, and I'm trying to go for 1.5 inch thick spacers. So these are way too big. We're not gonna be using this. I'm gonna go ahead and get some 1.5 inch spacer. Thankfully, one of my Toyota fabrication shop in town has them in stock, so we're just gonna get them locally. I've gone ahead and put those metal plates under the upper bump stop like I showed you guys earlier. Jack up the vehicle, support it on the cross member, and then we can go ahead and undo the upper ball joint. And like I said earlier, if you haven't replaced your upper ball joints, this will be the time to put new ones. So I'm gonna keep pressure on it, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit these studs out, because these studs are studded into the upper ball joints, that we need to push these out because we won't be using these studs no more. So get your big hammer and knock them out. You can see the studs. We won't be using these no more. Probably use the stud to punch it out too. Or maybe it'll just come out once we drop the A-arm. So go ahead and lower your jack, and then this should come out slowly. Nice and slow. The next thing I'm gonna do is, the reason why we put that bump stop here is because, like I said, we need this upper A-arm to be as high as possible to give us room to work around. If you still need more room, you need to get a bottle jack like this one here, and we're gonna jack up the lower A-arm. I'm gonna put my car jack under the lower A-arm so it don't flex down anymore. And then we're gonna use the bottle jack here to jack up the upper A-arm. And make sure when you jack it up, make sure the bottle jack is not blocking the lower A-arm when we're here, because later on we're gonna have to grind and cut this back piece so that the ball joint can fit behind it. You can see the upper A-arm going up, so definitely have the bottle jack. This is one of those jobs where you want to have the right tools. You don't want to be looking and messing around and doing things. You want to jack it as high as we can. Just make sure you're safe with it. So that should be good, I think. I'm gonna take the time to just clean this upper ball joints. Make sure you don't put too much stress on this brake line. Right now it's good the way it is right here. The so-called hardest part about this job is that this piece right here, from this section on to this back lip here, you need to cut or grind it, because the ball joint spacer will not sit in here properly unless you make some room. So it's okay to cut over here, because you're not gonna mess up the structural integrity of this A-arm or anything like that. So don't be too scared. You can take your ball joint spacer and use it as a reference. You'll grind and cut a little bit, and then this side right here faces down, and then you can see how it doesn't want to fit in there. It's not lining up because of the back. It's not sitting flush against the hose right here. So just use this as a template and start grinding away. You kind of want to start right where the corner is and just grind away. And again, it doesn't hurt if you grind too much or cut too much off, because it won't affect the integrity of the A-arm. So let's go ahead and start grinding. I'm using my 4-inch grinder here with a brand new fresh flat wheel. This is, I think this is a 40 grit, so this should be able to get some metal off really fast. If this doesn't work good, then we'll get the cutoff wheel and start using the cutoff wheel, but I want to try using this disc right here. Okay everyone, after some grinding, you gotta move at least ½ inch of metal, and this is the new spacer. This is a true 1.5 inch, not your 2-inch. This notch right here is pointed down so that you can get all the dirt and debris that fall in here. So we have it perfectly sitting in there now. You can check the alignment, make sure the hose align. Go ahead and clean it with some brake cleaner, and then we're gonna slap some paint on it just so that it doesn't cause any rust. The hardware that came with this ball joint spacer, I don't really like them because the head is a hex head. It's not a socket head. So I'm gonna go buy some new hardware bolts, and then in the meanwhile this will cure and we'll come back and do the install. Make sure you cover your shocks. My shocks are the red ones, so I don't want my paint to be on, I don't want my shocks to be black. Do the uppers, and then also the bottom that you went ahead and grind it. All nice and pretty. Before I go to the hardware store, I went ahead and put the spacer on because I had a feeling that these bolts that came with it were a little bit too long. These bolts, they measure out just to be about 3.25 inch long, which is way too long. So I'm gonna go, and the bolt that I'm gonna get is gonna be about 2.5 to 2.75. It's about perfect. So we're gonna get some 2 and the hardware store didn't have 2 3/4, so the 2.5 inch was too small, so I went ahead and just stuck with 3 inch. This is 5/16 by 3 inch coarse thread, It's different from the original ones. This one is the original one that came with the package. It was fully threaded out, whereas this one isn't, so it's a bit nicer. Now you can, I also bought extra washers. The kit comes with only one washer, and I guess you're supposed to put that on the nut side, but I bought extra washers so that I can put one on the head side and then one on the nut side, so it'll be extra strong. Now I'm debating if I want to put it down this way, but I think I'm gonna go the other way. I'm gonna shoot the bolt from this way and then put the nut on the top, because it'll be easier to torque it versus being down over here. So I got one of them on already. We'll go ahead and remove the rest of them. So you see, head, washer, and then goes from the bottom up, and then nut or washer again, and then we have the nut, and then we'll get this all torqued down. So let me find out what the torque spec is and get it tight enough for y'all. All right, everything went in nice and smooth. We have the bolt going from the bottom up. Washer, plenty of clearance down here. It's not touching the boot or anything like that. One thing you do have to keep in mind is that the Zerk fitting that I had on here for the 555 upper ball joint, it kind of goes like this. It doesn't point upward, so I can no longer grease my upper ball joint unless I remove the Zerk fitting and put a regular fittings that point straight. So that is something that I can do in the future, but I think when I do my passenger side, I'll go ahead and remove that curve, that angle. It's like a 45 angle Zerk fitting, and then put it straight upward. So 25 foot-pound for the bolts here. That's 25 right there. These nuts are lock nuts, so they have a lock nut on it. You can put extra thread locks if you wanted to, but I think I will be good. I'm gonna put some yellow marking on it, and then after you drive this for about a couple hundred miles, you always want to re-torque your nuts here. There you go, nice and tight. 25 foot-pounds, not that much. There you go. So this side's pretty much all done. Go ahead and remove your jack. Remove your jack, and you can also remove that plate that we put under that bump stop earlier. So that's pretty much it right there, guys. Upper ball joint or ball joint spacer install. Go ahead and put on your wheel, and then do the same thing for the other side, and then you must get an alignment, because right now your wheels were originally like this. Now they're going to be cambered in because these upper A-arms are the ball joint is now pushing downwards, making your lower A-arm like this, which is what gives you lift. So you do have to get professional alignment done. So this is all done here. That's pretty much it for the ball joint install. I'm gonna go ahead and do the passenger side. I got the passenger side all grinded out. I also went ahead and changed that Zerk fitting. So the Zerk fitting that originally comes with the 555, they kind of bend towards the 45 degree. So went ahead and replaced one and put one that's upward, so that's more easy to access when I put it with a ball joint spacer. It wasn't this flexed out when I was at my driveway. So after this quick drive here, you can see the A-arms, or the lower A-arms are definitely more tilted up. So I'm pretty sure we got about almost an inch of lift. But you can see the tires, they're not straight no more. They're curved in because it is now cambered in. So that's the reason why we need to get an adjustment. It looks kind of funny right now. Definitely need some bigger wheels. My toe, the toe is how your wheels are straight in or out. Right now it's towed in. Same thing for this side, towed in. You can just visually see it. And again, that's because of the tie rods. So that would need adjustment. Everything looks good. Lots of clearance between the upper A-arm and the inner of the tire wheel. Everything looks amazing. CV axle is definitely at an angle, but we're not too worried about it because we have the locking hubs, so it's not like they're always spinning. It looks amazing. I'm impressed with it. I love it. This rig is most gonna be a daily rig. It might see some off-roading here or there, but it's not gonna be a full-time off-road rig. More of just for city driving, and in the wintertime be a little bit more higher and have some ground clearance. I might be getting some new mud tires next month, so I'll see what we could do with it. I want to get some more aggressive tires, some 285s, something a little bit more beefy. Right now we're currently on 265 75/16 on 16 by 8 inch steels. And a little quick bonus, guys, a couple days ago I went ahead and refreshed my rear axle bearings. While I was in the rear axle, I went ahead and put a rear Spartan locker. So this rear axle does have the locker now. It has a Spartan locker, which is an automatic mechanism locker. So when you drive and you do any kind of turning, you do have to be careful because it does click. It's a ratcheting locker. So locker up for the rear, and the rear we have a add-a leaf. So if you guys are wondering, for the lift on the rear, it's just an additional leaf. It's called an add-a leaf. So that gives us about maybe 2 inches of lift. So that's why I wanted to do the ball joint spacers, just to help balance it out a little bit. Maybe when I get home, I'll measure again and see if there's any difference. I'm pretty sure it's more than 6 3/4 right now. So I'll go ahead and leave that tape on. But that's it right there, guys. I hope you guys enjoy and like it. If you guys got any questions, let me know in the comment section below. This is a ball joint spacer install on an IFS Toyota. This is the same application for pickups and 4Runner, and same thing as the tie rods. After that little quick drive and letting the suspension settle in, I actually got a little bit more lift than what it was. So when I first installed it, it was 7.5. It's now 7 3/4 on the driver's side. On the passenger side, definitely a much more difference. 5 3/4 stock. It was 6 3/4 right after I got installing it, and then it's right now it's 7 3/4. So it's definitely about 2 inches of lift on this side over here. So we can say that this spacer gave our truck a good 2 inches, maybe 1 3/4 of the lift. So I don't want to drive this truck anymore. I have an appointment in the next couple days, so I want to get this truck fully aligned first before I do any more miles on it, because I don't want to wear out my tires and stuff like that. So hope you guys enjoy.